Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us. My name is Keat. I'm Director of CADVision Systems here in Singapore. And today I've been tasked with this topic to address you on this whole subject of joining the I 4.0 revolution with CADVision. Okay, so let's get started. First, before we go into the details of I 4.0 adoption and all that, let's just get a quick update, all right, of I 4.0, where we are today. So since the context that we're discussing here is about Industry 4.0, right, I guess we need to do a quick recap of the definition of I 4.0. Now, last year in this same event, I shared mainly on the adoption of an Industry 4.0 using SIRI as a framework, right? I guess just a quick reminder, SIRI stands for Smart Industry Readiness Index, not the Apple SIRI. So this is a framework that is now adopted quite globally, especially through the World Economic Forum. And it consists of a few key components, right? One is the business framework, which consists of processes, technology, and organization. It describes what is in a business, the key components in a business, and of course, each of these pillars, like process, will expand into operation, supply chain, product life cycle, and all that. So this is basically the framework that we used to define what I 4.0 is, right? And just now I said, because this is a whole topic, and you hear a lot of people talk about I 4.0, and many a times I've come across content, articles, discussions, and all that assume, say, IoT is I 4.0, robotics is I 4.0, AR, AI, big data, all those terminologies are loosely grouped as I 4.0 technology. And I want to be clear that I 4.0 is more than that. I mean, those things are just technologies. And so, as you can see, if you can notice my mouse here, right, is that technology is just one portion of the Industry 4.0 framework. Okay, so what I'd like to make sure of is that we are thinking about I 4.0 as a much broader framework. Now, we know that many companies have embarked on their I 4.0 journey in one way or another, right? But let's use SIRI as a general gauge for I 4.0 adoption. So around the world, SIRI, as I said, has been sort of adopted by the World Economic Forum. After its adoption, more than 16 countries, and I guess it's still it's still increasing as we speak. Many countries have actually adopted SIRI as a result of embarking on their own I 4.0 transformation and looking for a comprehensive framework that they can use to sort of map out their journey, map out their transformation strategy. So SIRI has been used quite a lot around the world now. More people globally have been certified to perform the SIRI assessment, what we call the official SIRI assessment, and to help companies, big and small, to start, to scale, and to sustain their Industry 4.0 transformation. So that's what SIRI was really created to do. And so there are a couple of examples. Now, unfortunately, it's difficult to sort of get an empirical gauge on how many companies in the world have actually adopted Industry 4.0. We know that there are many, and there are various surveys around the world that are actually capturing some of this data, but they are not sort of consolidated in a global manner. So we can't tell for sure. But if I use SIRI as a gauge, then you can probably sort of get a sense of it. So here you can see that UAE's, the United Arab Emirates, has also adopted as a country using SIRI as a framework, and in fact using SIRI to determine their grants, how they're going to allocate grants and investments to companies that are embarking on I4.0. Same thing goes for the US. The state of Connecticut is also adopting SIRI as a standard. Irish Manufacturing Research, the IMR, also announced that they are adopting SIRI, and the Philippines Semiconductor and Electronics Industry Associations, together with their Ministry of Trade and Industry and all that, have also adopted SIRI. So just purely by country, you can see that quite a lot of countries, and therefore the industries within these countries, have actually adopted I4.0 and are having some kind of a program to encourage the local industries to take up I4.0. So we know that this is certainly something that is gaining momentum, that the acceptance and the adoption of Industry 4.0 is definitely global and is very broad in the scope. Now, all of us have experienced a lot of changes in the past 2 years, right, since COVID came along. So how has COVID impacted you in your work? Let's explore that so that we can get a sense of, the degree of adoption as well, as I said, staying on this whole topic on adoption. So here's a chart, a quick survey done by McKinsey. And over the course of this presentation, you'll probably see quite a number of these charts that I will be sharing with you. And I'm taking them primarily from McKinsey so that you can see a consistent picture, because you can only look at you want to make sure that there is consistency in the survey that we are looking at, that the data that we're looking at is actually speaking a consistent language. So just to take a quick look at the maturity of Industry 4.0 among in this particular survey, I believe it is about 400 companies surveyed, right? Companies whose Industry 4.0 implementation is more mature, whose implementation is more mature, will report a stronger ability to respond to crisis. So I'm just looking at this chart here. As you can see, over on the x-axis is the increasing maturity of Industry 4.0 implementation, and on the y-axis is the respondents that are able to respond to crisis in terms of percentages. So as you can see, there's a correlation. The more matured the companies are that are surveyed, the higher their percentage of or their ability to respond, right? So this is looking at 96% of them saying, hey, look, when they are more matured, they are more able to and more ready to respond to something like COVID. And of course, as a result of COVID, the perception of these respondents towards I4.0's value since the pandemic has certainly increased, as you can see in the chart. So this gives you a very quick flavor of where we are today. Now, if we dive a little bit deeper, we can see here, these are some of the challenges and disruptions that COVID-19 had caused in the last 2 years. And as a result of these problems, right, there have been acceleration of Industry 4.0 adoption, forcing companies to transform faster, whether they like it or not. So I guess these are some of the examples that you can see, right, in terms of material shortages, a drop in the demand. All these things are symptoms that we hear quite regularly. They are all very common among companies, and perhaps you in your own company are facing some of these same challenges. But I would say that some of these things are really the symptoms. They are the surface problems, right? And if I may, I'd like to point you to some of these underlying root causes. Some root causes may be employee engagement and culture, lack of collaboration and cohesion with the organization, right? These are some of the challenges and disruptions that COVID-19 had caused in the last 2 years, right? And as a result of these problems, there have been more significant acceleration of Industry 4.0, forcing companies to transform faster, whether they like it or not. So what you see here on the screen here is, very common challenges that people are facing or companies are facing, like material shortages, a drop in the demand, worker shortages, cash flows, and planning issues. And as you can see, actually, I mean, obviously the bigger problems are the material shortages and the drop in demand. And bear in mind that these two can happen at the same time to the same company. But I would say that these challenges are mostly symptomatic. They are the surface problems, right? But what are the root causes? So if I may, I'd like to point your attention to some of these few root causes, which I will be addressing, as you can see further down, why it is relevant to our topic today about Industry 4.0 adoption and where we fit in for CADVision, right? So if you can see here, lack of collaboration and cohesion within the organization. These are one of the fundamental challenges, right? There's obviously increase in demand and all that, or drop in demand, as you can see at the top. But again, another thing here is employee engagement and culture. So these two factors are the factors that I would like to zoom into later on, and present to you, or at least submit to you that these are some of the more fundamental and root problems that can be addressed, and certainly CADVision, our tools, our services, our products can certainly play a role in that. Okay, so as I've said earlier, net result is companies had to transform faster, right, as a result of COVID. So what have we learned from COVID, or what has it taught us since we have started on this journey working from home and all that? What has COVID taught us? Other than having to wash our hands regularly and wearing a mask when we go out, right? What other lessons have we learned, especially at work? Well, I can reduce all that we have experienced, whether it is the rush to update my product design, referring to work here, or chasing for material, chasing for equipment, talking to a supplier and your customers all the time, reconfiguring your production line to cater to, say, different product design or changes in your product design because of very rapid changes in market demand, or having to automate your processes due to manpower shortages and trying to balance between getting the right people and having the right equipment. If I can boil all these lessons learned down to one thing, it would be this: agility. And why do I say agility? I guess this is, I suppose everybody understands, what I'm trying to say here. When I say agility, I'm referring to the agility of the company, the business as a whole, to respond to all these changes, particularly brought by the pandemic. Here's a quick another chart, as I said earlier, that I will be showing, right? Agility has become more strategic than the cost of doing business. That means, right, and this is a survey again done by McKinsey to the same group of respondents globally, right? These are all manufacturing companies, by the way. And so this survey shows that agility to scale, agility to scale the operation up or down in response to market demand changes is now 18.4%, right? And 17.2% of the respondents say that flexibility to customize products to customer needs is important to them. So you can go down the list. Increase operational productivity and performance to minimize their costs, increasing resilience in manufacturing and supply chain to strengthen the company for future disruptions. So all these things, as you can see, right, relate to agility. Okay, so that's why I boil it down to, if, why you want to implement I 4.0, why is I 4.0 adoption so critical? It boils down to agility, right? Or what is typically known as the agile company. This is based on a study by Architect in Germany on, again, the definition of what is an agile company. So just to put it into perspective, an agile company is a company that can respond to an event quickly and with optimized response. Right? I won't say the best response, but sometimes the quicker you respond, the better it, and your response doesn't have to be perfect, right? So just on the y-axis here, you will see it represents the benefits or the value of adoption or adaptation. That means your response. So on the x-axis is the time, right? Now, as you know, typically when something happens, unpredicted, unexpected happens, you need insight, you need to collect some data to understand what had actually happened. Then you do your analysis, you decide on what your countermeasure is going to be, and then you implement your countermeasure. So these are at least 5 steps that you go through, and as you go through them, each of these steps cost time. So that's why you have this, latency time, insight latency, analysis latency, decision latency, and then action latency. So our ability to quickly and accurately respond to market forces is very critical to our long-term success. Notice here, the longer you take, the lower the value of your response, right? Here, remember the y-axis is the value of your response. So a good example is, of course, the quicker you get your PPE, for example, the faster you can respond to the demands in the hospital, in all kinds of healthcare organizations, right? And if the hospitals don't get their PPE fast enough, they can't do their job. So the value of their response is actually very low. So contrast that now with the agile company. Same here, the y-axis and the x-axis, but what we are showing here is that these events, from event to countermeasure rather, the 5 stages, right, can be squeezed into a narrower time band, right, where you have a very short total latency. As a result, you save this amount of time and you increase the value of your response from here to here, right? So this is where agility matters. This is why it is important. In order to attain this agility in our business, we need 4 enablers minimum, right? And of course, so just to go one by one, first thing you need is a clear vision and leadership. Now, we can't address that here. This is more about corporate management, governance, and all that. In addition, you also need your business processes to be more integrated, right? The more integrated they are, the easier you communicate, the faster you see information, the faster you can get things done, right? And this is addressed in most I 4.0 framework, particularly in SIRI. It's certainly a very prominent dimension in the SIRI framework. Then thirdly, you need convergence of technology. And this is the reason why I said, I 4.0 is not just IoT or IIoT or AR, VR. It's not just about AI, artificial intelligence, big data, robotics, etc. All those are technologies. They give you certain capabilities, but it's the convergence of the technology coming together that actually makes a big difference for you. And then lastly, a very important factor that is quite frequently overlooked, and as I tried to allude to earlier, is inter and intra-company collaboration. Our ability to collaborate is very, very critical, and that implies you have the right culture and you have the right tools, you have the right processes to enable teams to come together very quickly and to collaborate, to respond to the situation. So you need these 4 things minimum, right, in order to create or realize that agility in your company. We're not going to go into the first 2. So for the purpose of our discussion today, I will just focus on these last 2 factors: convergence of technology and the inter and intra-company collaboration. So remember just now I showed you the graph of the impact of COVID, some of the symptoms that people are experiencing, like shortage of material, a drop in demand and all that. And I mentioned that the root cause, a lot of these these symptoms are a result of the root problems, right? And the root causes, one of them are actually the need to collaborate faster, but most companies can't, right? So that's why I want to address them here. And the other part of it is the technology part. Okay, so let's move on. So stronger inter and intra-company collaboration. We'll tackle this one first. Again, let me show you a very quick chart. Same respondents, the 400 companies, manufacturing companies, you will see that collaboration capabilities are now high in priority for all these companies. What kind of collaboration are we talking about? Which technologies are they focusing on the most when implementing Industry 4.0 use cases? I would just highlight these first two, 51 and 50, right? Percentage points. That these are the two most critical. Of course, there are many others like connectivity and supply chain and all that. But the first one, digital technologies enabling remote work for non-frontline workers, cloud-based collaboration, video conferencing, and more. I think we all know this very well. Most of us have been working from home. The ability to work digitally, number one, very critical. But what I would emphasize here is cloud-based collaboration, right? So that's the first thing. And the second thing is technologies connecting end-to-end value chain from suppliers to manufacturers, your logistics, and for better customer visibility, planning, and control. So these are also actually collaboration tools, cloud-based capabilities that are now top in priority for companies that are adopting Industry 4.0, right? There are a few more, like if you can read here, connectivity and data visualization that create transparency in operational performance for manufacturing and for supply chain. Of course, there's robotics and automation. Then there's predictive analytics. There's AR, VR. So there are many more that are, you could think of them as tools, but underlying those tools, right, is the ability to collaborate. All right. So in most in I4.0 framework, as I mentioned, right, they talk about the ability to collaborate. They look at it as one very key dimension. We've all experienced the need for collaboration and teamwork, right? Company that can collaborate better is also able to compete better and faster. So collaborating digitally has accelerated the cost of, and while the cost of collaboration has decreased. We've learned this in the last couple of years, couple of months, I suppose, last 2 years. With Industry 4.0, right, a network of systems and technologies like equipment and applications, hardware and software have been created to enable and facilitate stronger collaboration among teams. So in such a highly networked environment, companies must be able to collaborate effectively and adapt swiftly. So what are the key attributes of a successful collaborative teams? I would suggest to you a couple of these. First is technology has enabled greater degree of real-time communication. So the key here is real-time. To be able to collaborate effectively, you do need real-time data. To be able to collaborate effectively, you do need digitalization. A lot of things need to be digitalized, right? Whether it's your 3D model, whether it is your order management, even bill of material, all those things, need to be digitalized for you to be able to share and interpret them in the right way quickly and in real time. And then thirdly is the communities or teams can be formed easily and dynamically, and they can be updated dynamically. So what this is saying is that an effective collaborative team, right, needs to also have the capability to be dynamic, to start or to disband very quickly. Once maybe the thing is the project is finished, disband, different members move on to a different project, or you expand the team or you shrink the team very dynamically, right? Fourthly, collaborative teams need to be able to cut through company and department walls. Actually, technically speaking, the definition here is they need to be able to share risks, rewards, and responsibilities, the 3 Rs. And then there is greater decentralization of decision making, primarily at the collaborative team level. You don't have to wait until you percolate or you surface the decisions up to the top, things like that. So the net effect is actually organizations have to come closer together. Sometimes it's 2, 3, 4, 5 different organizations, suppliers, customers, ecosystem partners, trade associations and all that come together in a collaborative team in order to respond to a particular situation. Okay, so this is the what we've established here is the nature and the key attributes of inter and intra-company collaboration. Now, to put this into perspective, again, I say, why is this important, right? This enabler is so critical that it is one of the 16 SIRI dimensions. So how does SIRI actually look at it? So SIRI looks at the maturity from 0 to 5. There are altogether 6 bands, from informally collaborating to just communicating, or cooperating, coordinating, collaborating, and integrated. So these are just names, I know, but there are actual definitions for each of these bands. Ideally, we want to look for a company that is at least at band 4, where you are able to, as I said, collaborate. And there are definitions for what we mean by collaboration. So now that we've established that inter and intra-company collaboration is critical to our success, now what tools do you think teams need in order to collaborate successfully? Right? Think about that for a while. We will get to convergence of technology next. Why I'm leaving that question is because I'm hoping that eventually you'll be able to see the technologies that we in CADVision, and certainly among our other partners as well, the tools that come together that bring to bear these capabilities are there today, right? So later on, when I go into the tools, when I go into the technologies, hopefully this will become clearer, right? Okay, so now let's move on to technologies. Technologies and systems must be able to share and interpret data more efficiently and openly across company and across geographic borders. So the advancement of technologies such as cloud computing, AI, IoT, etc. Just now I talked about all those things, right? Now it is about the convergence of these technologies that are important, that make a difference to companies, to people, to businesses, and to their processes, because these are the ones that enable them to work together. The technologies enable all these businesses, people, and processes to come together, to be integrated and work as one. All right, so what are the technologies? Maybe I won't go into individual technologies, but the category of technologies, right? Let's break it down and examine some of the key technologies. First is connectivity, right? Connectivity refers to machines and systems being able to share data, as I mentioned earlier, with each other. And one system can interpret data from the other system and act on them without much translation or manipulation. So that's what I mean by connectivity, right? As an example here is, you've got OPC-UA and MQTT. These are all the communication protocols that have become standardized and enable machines to talk to each other. And in some cases, software systems know how to interpret some of this data as well. So technology has certainly advanced to a degree that it can now enable us to bring together a collection of systems, machines and software, hardware and software, right? To talk to each other. Next is cloud computing. And that in itself is a technology category because it's got security, it's got performance management and all that must come into play in order for cloud computing to be viable. So the advancement of the technologies within cloud computing have provided us a unified platform for applications and machines to communicate with each other and for people to access them in real time from anywhere across boundaries. So that's cloud computing, one category of technology that has really made it possible for us to collaborate very well and to realize our I 4.0 vision and strategy. Thirdly, you've got IoT or IIoT, right? And I think this topic has been covered very broadly by hardware providers that provide the IoT sensors and all that. So basically, these technologies now enable the ongoing collection and sharing of real-time data through the IoT or IIoT devices. And then next, we have big data, right? Big data, of course, refers to the ability to sort of collect all this information, all the data that you have generated with your IoT devices and through all your systems, through humans. All this information needs to be collected, interpreted, right? And then consumed to be used somehow. So again, this technology is also clearly available, quite mature. They've been around for a long time. So collectively, these four categories of information or technologies, right, accelerate transformation, right? And they enable I 4.0 to happen, Industry 4.0 to be realized in a company. And remember, I just keep going back to the word agile. All these things on their own, they are just a capability, but collectively, when they come together, they enable you to be agile, right? So now let's switch gear a bit. I would like to talk about how CADVision systems, our products and our services fit into your transformation journey. Today's event, of course, is about 3D experience. And so ultimately, this is where I want to get to. In the rest of the day, you will hear quite a lot of my colleagues who will be talking about individual technologies. They may be talking about individual capabilities that I'm covering here as an overview, right? So just to give you a quick now context of where do we fit in CADVision. Now, through the day, as I said, my colleagues will be showcasing the pieces that will come together that enable the collaboration capabilities and the integrated technologies that I have been talking about. So today's theme is called 3D Experience Day, right? So my colleagues will be showing you the different pieces, right, that enable collaboration among teams and enable integration of business processes and ultimately enable the agility that I was talking to you about for a business. So let's look at our products, right? And we've got to switch gear a bit. Now we're talking about software primarily. And so historically, what I'm sure most of you, if you've gone through various software implementations or used your company's CRM or ERP, MES or PLM or WMS, all these three-letter acronyms, as I like to call them, you will know that you would implement these systems individually, right? They take a lot of time. You may implement ERP, and then you may implement your CRM. You may then put in place your R&D systems like your CAD, CAM, CAE, and PDM, mainly our SolidWorks products, right? And you may have QMS, MRP, supply chain management systems for your logistics. Now, all these things are implemented usually, historically, in separate systems. All right. Now, then after that, you need to make them talk to each other. So to get them to talk to each other, to share data, usually takes more time, takes a lot of engineering effort. It's expensive, slow to deploy. So that's what's been happening before I 4.0. Now, once I 4.0 came along and once cloud technology came along, we're now able to look at things in a very different perspective. All these things can be actually implemented in one platform through your cloud. And here, what we are going to show you later on is the 3D Experience platform. So the 3D Experience platform is seamless and unified platform for multiple applications that sit on top of this platform, right? Everything is on the cloud. Your major applications are all available, whether it's an ERP or an MES, product lifecycle management, CAM, your SolidWorks can be on the cloud. Simulation can be also on the cloud. And of course, you can see that there are a lot of benefits once you put all these things on the cloud. All right. So here's a change of, I guess, perspective that I just want to highlight to you. The details of these applications that are available, how the platform works and all that, I think you will have the opportunity to go through a little bit more when my colleagues come on and talk about the technology in detail. But what I'd like you to think about is, when you go through, when you listen, and when you evaluate some of these technologies, again, go back to the question I brought up earlier, the context, right? Which is, how can you get that agility that is needed? How can you respond quickly? How can you even implement some of these things quickly? So imagine that paradigm shift when everything is, all your ERPs, your CRM, your MES, and your PLM, they're all available on the cloud. They're all sitting on the same platform. Theoretically and technically, they should not need a lot of data translation to talk to each other. They should all be able to communicate and talk to each other, right? Almost in instantaneously or real time. There isn't any need, further need for you to spend time to get people to write APIs and all that to integrate some of these systems together. That's benefit number one. Benefit number two is you don't actually need to buy the entire system anymore, right? Because you can think about it as, I just need to buy the features or the capability, and as according to my role, my responsibility, my job, I just need those few capabilities. That's what I will get. So again, on a platform, on the cloud, subscription based, you sort of pay for what you need when you need it, right? So that's another big change in mentality. And all these things are now available, can be realized in the cloud. And what we will be sharing with you is that this technology is certainly available now today. It's not something that we are, planning for in 2 years' time or 3 years' time. It's actually here today. Okay, just to give you another flavor of what's, just now I mentioned collaboration, right? So I mentioned two very critical factors, collaboration and the convergence of these technologies. I showed you earlier the convergence of the technologies from a software standpoint is now available on the 3DEXPERIENCE platform. Now, in terms of collaborative capability, let's dive into some of the features, some of the capabilities. Now, there are too many of these boxes here to go through, but each of them represent an app on the platform. All right. 3D markup tool is an app. Change action is an app. That means if you have an NPI or you change order, ECO and all that, that's like an app. Collaboration for approvals and all that, it's also an app. Tracking issues related to your product, new product introduction or new product development. Issues will come up. Typically, I think historically, people capture some of these issues and track them on an Excel spreadsheet, for example. But issue management is also available on the app. So as you can see, there are so many apps. I can't go through all of them. There's a 3D drive, like a central storage. There's a 3D play that allows you to see all your different 3D models, and expand them, just explode them and all that. You have your dashboard. Of course, you can, decide what kind of KPIs are important through all these different apps and then collect them, show them on a dashboard. So lots of these things, these are all collaborative tools that I was trying to highlight earlier. So it is through the ability, through some of these apps, right, through some of these online collaborative tools, that teams are now able to come together very dynamically. They can start, form, they can change, update, add more members into the team. Where, for example, 3D Swim here, that's a community app where data can be shared within the community. There's one-to-one collaboration as well as one-to-many collaboration. You can send data to one person or to many. And so there's all kinds of things that you can do to create this, to realize this true collaborative experience. Okay, So this is one aspect of it, collaborative. Now, convergence of engineering technology, I want to go a little bit more into the detail. So on this platform that we are showing you, and we'll share more of the details later on today, is it consists of your SolidWorks that I think most of you who know CADVision know SolidWorks. The whole suite of products that are on SolidWorks today, they are on-premise, or what we call, they're installed in the workstation at your office. They are on-premise. Most of the capabilities now are also available on the cloud. Then I've covered just now the collaborative platform, the cloud-based end-to-end collaboration solution. Easy to deploy, very easy to scale. You've still got your 2D also on the online draft site. And then we have the Delmia Works, which is a combination of ERP and MES together. Kind of like you're a two-in-one. And these are end-to-end, out-of-the-box solution. In fact, Delmia Works is also integrated in such a way that it actually reads SolidWorks bill of material, for example. It's direct integration because they're all sitting on the same platform. And lastly, you've got all the simulation apps from the most basic FEA to the most complex multi-physics simulation is all available on this platform. And the beauty of it, of course, is especially for simulation, you won't need to sort of buy, the entire system sitting in your office with heavy hardware and use it for once or twice, and then you don't use it anymore until maybe 3 to 6 months later. All those investment don't need to be made upfront. You can just subscribe to what you need and get as much hardware or computing power as you need, all on the platform, and then you just worry about getting the results. So that's another huge benefit of having all these things on the cloud. So this is where the technology convergence come in, right? So what I'm hoping you can see is that as these technologies come together, as the tools enable collaboration, it actually forms the foundation to your ability to adopt Industry 4.0. So the whole idea here is that this is not just a cloud platform. This is a transformation platform. It is the platform that you use to transform from A to Z. I mean, from where you are to where you want to be. You've got to plan out, you've got to have your strategy and all that. Next, if I were to map our technologies to the 16 dimensions within the SIRI framework, as you can see here, it actually maps quite nicely. Now, obviously, we can't claim to have everything for I4.0. As you can see, facility, that's not something that we do, but certainly it is, because it is an open platform, more things can be added on later, right? But for those of you who are familiar with our products, you will be able to see where our products can fit in to each of the 16 dimensions here. And on top of it is the 3DEXPERIENCE platform that I said is sitting on the cloud, and it provides a foundation for all these other applications to work for you, right? And to enable you to transform, whether it is at your operational integration, your supply chain integration, your product lifecycle integration, all these things can be realized through this 3DEXPERIENCE platform. All right. And then lastly, but not least, I would at least like to also highlight the fact, what CADVision can do, as I said right from the beginning, right? What is our role as your transformation partner? Well, first of all, in CADVision, we have certainly equipped ourselves with the right knowledge and the right people. So we have certified I4.0 consulting. I was one of the first to get certified for SIRI consulting and to do the assessment. We can do technology road mapping for you. So at high level, if this is how you're going to start, as a business owner, you want to understand how you want to, embark on this journey and how our technologies may fit in. We can do that right from the beginning, right? And then we have certified implementation engineers for each of the applications. We also have very strong ecosystem partners. Now, as you saw earlier, we are certainly not saying that we are going to be able to give you everything you need in your transformation journey. There's no one company that can give you everything. We realize that, and so we have decided to work with partners, very strong ecosystem partners that can bring in other things that will supplement or complement what you need. So for example, if you need hardware integration, we also work with quite a number of systems integrators. Some of them supply their own hardware. Some of them are independent system integrators that will, bring together a collection of hardware that can help you complete that automation vision that you want. And then finally, we have very strong, solid principal support from Dassault Systems and some of our other principals as well. So with that, I hope I've given you a good overall picture of what we are trying to share with you this year, the theme for this year, and where 3DEXPERIENCE, where CADVision can play a role in your transformation journey. Thank you very much.